Our next presenter is Naresh Agarwal, who's a faculty member at Simmons University courses Syllabus. And his presentation title is Teaching Online Instructional Design and Practical Strategies for Remote Education. Naresh, when you're ready.
Thank you, Ron. Can I record the presentation? I don't have privileges, I think.
It is recorded.
It is recorded? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you, everyone. It's great to be here and be able to talk to everyone. And it was really nice attending Sharon's talk as well. And I learned a lot through that. And I'm going to share my screen. So let me get to this slide here. So I'm talking about teaching online, instructional design, and practical strategies for remote education. My name is Naresh Agarwal. I'm an associate professor and also the director of the Information Science and Technology concentration at the School of Library and Information Science at Simmons. And Professor Rong Tang is my colleague over there. And we also have Anne Graff and other colleagues and also students attending right now. So it's really great to be with everyone. And that's my email address, agarwal@simmons.edu, and my Twitter handle. And my website link is also given over here. So the big question is, why teach online? So I joined Simmons in 2009, and I primarily started teaching face-to-face when I joined. And I think around 2013, 14 or so, we started going more towards online. And at that time, and even until now, we had this big philosophy of high touch, being there for our students. And I really enjoyed the classroom environment where I could talk to students and be with them and be very interactive and see them learn and have that face-to-face eye contact with students. So I used to be a skeptic of online teaching. I used to think that how can you possibly do a good job teaching and learning online when the face-to-face component is all that important. And around the same time, Simmons Online started some trainings for people who were interested in teaching online. And I attended that training, and I remember it was over the course of the session where we had to take the training and also by that time design course modules to teach other students online. And by the time I finished that 1.5 month of training, I told them that I have moved from being a skeptic of online teaching and learning to being an advocate. And since then, I've taught a number of courses online. And now I think I've been primarily teaching online with some face-to-face classes every now and then. And so this was even beyond, even pre-COVID stage. But last year, what happened in the COVID period is that we saw that almost everybody had to teach online. Even those who were skeptics or had vowed never to teach online, they had to somehow move to this online teaching at that stage. So also, like, I use online interaction a lot in my research as well. I've had research collaborators with whom I've published papers, and some of them who I've never met in person, but we have collaborated over Zoom. Before that, it used to be GoToMeeting. And now somehow seeing the entire world moving online, I kind of feel more towards moving towards face-to-face. But before that, I was quite happy being online. But now I think we've just had, we're reaching that level of Zoom fatigue where we don't get enough of the face-to-face interaction now. So, and this was a picture from one of my recordings for my class. This is the recording room at Simmons University. So, and this was my journey from being a skeptic of online teaching to being an advocate. So I wanted to talk briefly about the course design process, which is the backwards design process. I attended a training done by the Center for Excellence in Teaching, where they did a 4-day course design institute, where we could take any course of our choice and design it from scratch. And one of the things about online teaching or face-to-face teaching is that we always felt that, and one of the things which our dean then, Eileen Abels, used to specify a lot as well, is that the online and face-to-face classes have to be equivalent, meaning that a student should get an equivalent measure of experience, no matter the student, whether the course was offered in an online modality or a face-to-face modality or hybrid modality. So in that sense, even though the degree of engagement, the engagement mechanisms might be different, but the student learning should not get affected irrespective of the modality. And that was always my quest in my teaching. So in this backwards design process, the idea was that when we were designing a class from scratch, to think of what are the big rocks or the big chunks of things that we want our students to get from that class, and then start that. So I want to show you a template of one of the classes I designed during that period. And this was a class called web development and information architecture. So I was part of this 4-day backward design process for this class. So in the first day, we just thought of what are the keywords that I want the students to get from the class. And there were things like web design was part of them, web development was part of them, then user-centered, being user-friendly. I think that was a key part. Being able to address the needs of the client was there, and something to do with about developing and web development was a big part of it. The tools for that, the design and aesthetics was a big part of it, and also to be able to evaluate the websites for usability. So then at the end of that, I came up with this one-line objective for the course was to teach the students to learn how to design, develop, and evaluate professional, responsive, and user-friendly websites that address client needs. So once we had those big rocks in terms of the keywords identified, the next task was to take those and to convert them into course outcomes which are measurable, and to have all of these as in terms of verbs like apply, employ, demonstrate, recognize, which could again be measured in some form, and to be able to change all of them into these statements. Then, so I had this thing about project management, and then employing information architecture and usability best practices in web design, aesthetics and color theory, and talking about design issues, and then tools and technologies, and also being able to evaluate the usability of websites. So this took about another 4-hour session on the second day by the time we got to that stage. So once this was ready, on the third day, like we had a map. So this was slowly building up. So we had this four-column table. In the first column were all the course outcomes, learning outcomes that we put in that session. And then the next task was to see in what way could I measure each of these. So what were the assignments that I could design that could measure each of these learning outcomes. So then there was this class participation part, and then having a project plan and needs assessment as a second part of the class. So I thought that a good way to design this class would be to think of it as a web development company, to divide the students into teams, which each student could be, like each team could be from 3 to 5 students or 3 to 4 students. And some of them would have designers, some of them would have developers or usability experts in that. And they all formed together and worked worked throughout the semester in a way that each project built upon the other. So they took a bad library or archive website to begin with, something that they really wanted to improve, and they could work with them to either gather their needs or hypothetically imagine their needs and put that in their first plan that was there. And once the plan was in place, they thought of what the roles in the team would be and what are the things that needed to get done. Then the next part would be to come up with the structure of the website. What's a wireframe and a mood board to design that, design a color scheme, design the pieces that needed to be in there, and then to think of the colors and aesthetics. Again, that was part of this assignment that would be there, and then also to think of responsiveness, issues of responsiveness, so that the website plays beautifully in different environments, whether on a desktop, or laptop, or iPad, or a tablet, or a smartphone, and so on. And then to think of then to come up with a way by all of them demonstrate their skills and having learned whatever skills were required in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and so on, in terms of other skills that were needed for the class. And finally, to build the final website, and also to come up with a plan for usability evaluation. So this was the assignments that were designed for it. The next stage was to think of the rubrics. What would be the acceptable results? And this, I think we did that in the third day or so. So once the thinking of these and it need not be major assignments. There could be other class activities as well, which could help towards achieving these learning outcomes. So thinking of what would be acceptable for each of these. So that was the next thing to be planned. And the final day, that what we did was that once so think of what topics need to be covered in the class, so that I'm able to help the students achieve these learning outcomes. So these topics came in the end, and then the final part after the topics were in place was to think of how these topics could then be sequenced. So then to put them in a weekly format. So the reason why I'm sharing this today is because most of the time when we think of a class, we begin with topics. And that may not be the right approach in this. So what I learned over this is that beginning with the big rocks and then going into the outcomes, and then finally arriving at the topics that can help achieve those outcomes, was a good way of designing a class from scratch. So once this was there, This class has now been taught for a good number of years. So this was the current syllabus from spring 2021. And so in my syllabus, I typically have the faculty information. I also try to keep my tone conversational in the syllabus so that the students feel that it's approachable, and they feel that they can be comfortable coming to me or talking to me at any point in time. Then there is the student hours listed over here, and I talk about how to join Zoom for the class. And the format that we had in SLIS for a long time was asynchronous online classes where we didn't need to meet face to face. And now after COVID, we have also been talking about having more synchronous classes. So what I experimented with different numbers of synchronous classes. I tried 4 of them, and I found that really didn't work all that well. And I tried one that was too little. So now I do typically I do 2 synchronous classes, which were optional for students, and those who missed them, they can watch the recording. So I have a kickoff one right at the very beginning, and then one more in the middle of the semester. And in this one, then students can then, if they have any questions until that point, I do a formative evaluation. I ask them for things that are going well or not going well, and we address that as a group, and we also look at how the final projects are coming along. And then the weekly flow is that in this part, I get the students I tell them which is day 1 of the week and which is the last day of the week, and also give them a tentative plan as to how they should pace the online learning in their own way. And they can, of course, change that, but I try to give them a guideline. Then we have Moodle, in which where we have all the entire course sits, and in the library, again, we have a course reserves. So this, I think the last year or even before that, the library has really been very good and proactive at trying to digitize or scan whichever books were not accessible on campus. So a lot of the materials are also available so that all the online students are able to get to those materials. And then I talk about the required and recommended textbooks over here. And there's a big section on why the course is important, and a summary of the course and the learning objectives and outcomes. And then a week by week outline of the course along with the dates. So which would be the first day of the week and which would be the last day for each week. And then for each week, there's also detailed learning outcomes and also the topics covered in the particular week and any activities that are required. So that is there for all the various weeks of the semester. And then I lay out the assignments that need to get done, which ones are individual or they have to be done in a team, and what would be the due dates. And the details of the assignments are also given here and also in the Moodle system. And then for the team grading, I asked the students that they would need to list all members of the team. Imagine that that team would get $100 for working the assignment, and they would have to list how much each person earned for that assignment, just so that every student is able to participate and get equitable credit for their work in the assignment. And I also like to put the grading scale with a 0.99, just so that it is I don't need to round off any points when the final grades are being done at the end of the semester. And for late policy, I have a policy in the syllabus, but I've never really I tell the students that I'm not strict about it, because I know that a lot of them go through various kinds of difficulties at different points in time, and especially during the COVID year, people have had very unforeseen circumstances where they've either lost family members or have known somebody who's had COVID and so on. So I've always tried to give extensions where possible, and sometimes we also have incompletes where students can do the work at the end of the semester. So the other parts are again more about class participation. This part is, as I'd say, I think this is important. So I have a statement here saying that in the past, I pride myself on responding to emails within a minute, even at 1 a.m. at night. And over time, I realized that I was perpetuating a culture where we're not living fully in the physical present, don't have enough white space in their lives, and get anxious if we don't receive immediate responses to our messages. So unless something is urgent, you can expect a reply from me within a 24 to 48 hour period, or you can write lines. So I still tell them that I still try to respond within the day, but I have a statement here just so that they don't get anxious if they don't get an immediate reply. And then there are other things about help and support, honor code, and academic integrity, the accessibility services, and gender-based misconduct policy. So this was about the syllabus. Then this is a dev website that we have on Moodle. We have a different theme now that we're using, but this was a prior theme that we had. So typically, there would be the course homepage with the intro video, and then some announcements and instructor forum. and things about learning online and collaborating on Google Drive. And then for each week, there would be again a weekly video, as well as learning objectives and due dates for what was needed in the class, and readings if there were any readings, and discussion forums. And if there were Zoom recordings, then the links would be put over there, and various signups for the assignments and so on. I also get students to share their IDs for their messaging tools. So it's whatever messaging tools they use, they can again have another way of reaching out to each other, and any recommended videos, and as well as like weekly videos, they would be put up for the class. So for each week, again, there would be the readings, as well as various lecture videos for each one, and then the PDF of the slides would be there along with each video part, and then the discussions, as well as the labs. So that's just an example of a discussion. So typically I try to give students multiple choices, options for discussion questions, where they can pick one or more questions and then answer based on that. And I'd also try to have a lab component where they could learn, let's say, Bootstrap in this example over here, and then trying out various tools and then answer based on that. And during this COVID year, I was part of the 3-person team that was trying to help faculty members move to the online, even for those who didn't have prior online experience. So I created a number of videos. One video was about using Zoom for synchronous online teaching, and this was a video to help other faculty members. The other video was about changing like Zoom backgrounds. Other neat things. So see that use San Francisco setting, whatever you. This is my hometown. So this was like a simple video on helping use Zoom backgrounds, and then another video on how to use a Panopto to create to record a lecture. In my case, but I would be silent for a while, and the recording has started. You can see that. So this was just a video on how to use Panopto for online recording. So this was some of the things that we've been talking about: creating and teaching an online course design, syllabus, Moodle demo, and Panopto and Zoom. I just want to take 1 or 2 minutes to talk about my teaching philosophy and strategies. So I wrote this document 5 years ago, and it has some of the things that I do in my classes, which are important both for face-to-face and online classes. In the middle of the semester, I do a formative evaluation, and I ask students 3 questions: what is working for you, what is it that you like, what's not working for you, what is it that you don't like, and what suggestions do you have to help improve things that you don't like. And one of the things which I've seen over time is that a specific strategy is not important. I may do the same thing which students ask me to change. I change it for them, and 2 years later, students will ask me to change back to something which I changed in the first place, because they would want me to go back to something which I was doing originally. So what I find is that what I'm doing is not important. What is important is if what I'm doing is working for this particular set of students or not, because the dynamics might have changed until that point. So getting this continuous feedback is very important. So here, a backward design process is what we talked about. Then readings, I try to keep them current. Then in-class discussions in a face-to-face class, and in online class, again, having live sessions, having weekly office hours, virtual office hours for the students, and getting them to exchange IDs. All of those are important strategies. And this applies to blended and hybrid learning as well, which try to combine the best of face-to-face and online. And online discussion, again, requiring a minimum number of posts, coming up with specific activities, getting them to pick from various answer types, and having rubrics. I try to I've moved to paper-based to online submissions, and I grade electronically on PDFs using annotations. I've been doing that for a long time now. And other things are trying to remember student names and having a class participation component. Using a combination of tools that I've tried out which work best, and over time, like I've tried out various kinds of tools which would help students in different ways. Like for instance, using like a voice thread to have more of a feel of in-class discussion in an online environment. And typically I also try to do a happiness talk at the end of my classes for students in the last 20 or 30 minutes of the class. And so this is more from the philosophy, helping students develop a hunger to learn, and then understanding my students, setting clear expectations, preparing, knowing my stuff, communicating effectively, understanding the learning process, and encouraging collaborative learning and learning from peers as well. So I try to structure, I give them mock deadlines a week before the actual deadline, so students can grade provide feedback on each other's work, and then they submit the final work to me. So the quality of the final assignment really greatly improves when that happens. Providing regular feedback to students, trying to be approachable, and being able to make regular changes to the class, and then being organized, flexible, and creative, and having a passion for teaching, and finally consistently seeking to improve. So that was all. I know my time is just up now, I think. So these are my questions, and that's my Twitter handle, and this is my website, which is here. That's my, I was just updated it recently, and a lot of my research is also listed here.
Thank you,
So thank you.
Naresh.